headmistress and acting director, patron of the Leaders, Writers and Debaters Club, members of this great club, parents and guardians watching us online from home, ladies and gentlemen. Today is International Day. The day is being observed under the theme Regional Cooperation for Peace and Stability. A thoughtful reflection on the theme is the inspiration for today's debate motion, which motion is aptly titled, Francophone and Anglophone national identities impede effective cooperation towards peace and prosperity in the West African sub-region. Is West Africa cooperating enough? Is there peace in the sub-region? How about prosperity? Can any of these questions be considered within the light of the realities of Francophone and Anglophone West African national identities? Are there really Anglophone and Francophone national identities, or these are just figments of our own fertile imaginations? Fortunately, I do not bear the heavy responsibility of answering these questions. However, my friends on the various teams will make what we all hope will be a fair attempt at responding to these and more questions inherent within the motion of the debate. Hence, without much ado, it is my privilege to introduce the Leaders, Writers and Debaters Club of Morning Glory International School's International Day Debate. Kindly note that parents and guardians are the judges for this debate. We will therefore be expecting your votes at the end, so please give us your attention for the duration of the debate. My name is Sonia Vasnani. We all hope you will enjoy our effort. Thank you.
Our dear headmistress and dear parents watching in from home, debaters of the Writers and Debaters Club, good afternoon. My name is Mikalot Ruben Lamte. I'm patron of the club and I will be moderating today's event. I'd like to spell out a few ground rules so that all who are watching will understand what is going on. We have 2 teams of 4, but 3 will be speaking. We have the principal speaker who will spend 6 minutes laying the main argument for their side. Then we have the first support speaker who will be rendering rebuttals and also re-emphasizing points that have been made by the principal speaker. Then we have the third speaker who would be concluding, but before they conclude, they will also offer further rebuttals. We look forward to a very wonderful moment of debate, and I will be assisted in my role by my able timekeeper, Ivana Tano. Thank you very much.
Honorable Headmistress, our dependable patron and moderator for today's debate, Mr. Mikalord R. Lamte, fellow teammates and debaters, dear friends and prestigious members of the Leaders, Writers and Debaters Club of MGIS, here today, cherished parents and guardians watching us online from home, thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The motion for today's debate is Francophone and Anglophone national identities impede effective cooperation towards peace and prosperity in the West African sub-region. My teammates and I will be arguing the affirmative or for the motion. Thank you. First of all, we would like to say that the division of West Africa into Francophone and Anglophone blocks creates an inherent division because there are even formal groups that were created and agreed upon in 1994 and in 2000. Those groups are the West African Economic and Monetary Union. Those are subgroups of the ECOWAS, which means we're the ECOWAS, but there are still subgroups of France and Anglophone countries. So those are the West African Economic and Monetary Union, which comprises former French colonies, which means Francophone countries, and the West African Monetary Zone, which comprises Anglophone countries or former British colonies such as Ghana and Nigeria. So the existence of those blocks creates inherent division, and the interests are bound to conflict as different subregions in the ECOWAS have different aims. And also the ECOWAS is a political and economic union meant to fortify Africa and West Africa and unify us. However, the existence of the West African Economic Monetary Union and the West African Monetary Zone may well void this aim, because not only do our economic aims conflict, but also our political aims. First of all, the divide is harmful because not only is there a huge language barrier which is caused by the taking of identities such as Francophone and Anglophone just due to our colonial legacies. This has caused a lot of leaders from the West African Economic Monetary Union and the West African Monetary Zone to have been reported to not have communicated effectively due to miscommunication. Indeed, translation devices and translators themselves exist. However, those have been proved to sometimes be ineffective and inaccurate. Also, as I had mentioned previously, the ECOWAS is a political and economic union, and the Francophone and Anglophone identities separate us economically and politically. This proof of this can be seen through the recent negotiations about the ECO. For example, in September 2020, the 57th reunion of the head of states of the ECOWAS, there have been several standbys by way of long-term economic and political achievements for the whole ECOWAS because of the tensions brewing between the Anglophone and the Francophone blocs. So a lot of decisions that could have impacted me and my fellow Africans positively have been put on standby just because we choose to maintain those harmful colonial identities. Moreover, the ECOWAS bloc has been proved to be very weak when in terms of trade, accounting for only 0.5% of international trade, according to the IMF. This is not only due to the disagreements between the West African Economic Monetary Union and the West African Monetary Zone, but also the problems in communication that I had mentioned earlier. Also, during the recent negotiations concerning the currency of the ECO, there have also been several disagreements. These include Nigeria, the most populous and one of the richest countries in Africa, denunciating the Francophone countries of West Africa and accusing them of impeding their decades-long work to be the linchpin in the implementation of the ECO. This is because as we form different identities, ladies and gentlemen, our interests are bound to differ. And every bloc is looking out for their own interests, while we are only supposed to look out for the interests of one entity, the ECOWAS. The WAMZ countries, which are the Anglophone countries, have recently criticized WAEME countries such as Côte d'Ivoire because they stated that the ECO was supposed to be the common currency of the WAMZ, because they still have grudges against the Francophone countries for adopting a common currency in 1945. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to add that instead of emphasizing our cultural differences and our cultural melting pot in Africa, the existence of these identities make it seem as though we are only two blocs that never agree, instead of all our positive things that we have to contribute. Thank you very much.
Our immaculate patron and moderators for today's debate, Mr. Michael Lord R. Lumte, wonderful teammates and friends of this great club, loving parents and guardians participating online, we appreciate your involvement. Ladies and gentlemen of the broader MGIS family, good afternoon. My name is Katie and I will be against the motion. The motion under debate is Francophone and Anglophone national identities impede effective cooperation towards peace and prosperity in West African sub-regions. My teammates and I disagree with this position and will argue the negative. To begin with, Anglophone and Francophone identities help with the economic growth of West African countries. According to a socio-economic analysis of Francophone and Anglophone West Africa, in 2012 and 2015, many West African countries experienced high growth. But in 2016, growth started to flub for some countries, namely Nigeria and Liberia, recording negative growths. And let's keep in mind that these countries have a very high level reputation in corruption, which doesn't concern the Francophone and Anglophone identities. Although some countries such as Côte d'Ivoire at almost 9% high economic growth. In 2017, the collective African growth rebounded to 2.5%. In 2018, it is projected to increase to about 3.6%, and in 2019 to 3.8%. Nigeria's projected performance drives these trends too, says the AFDB Group, African Development Bank Group. That is to say that the Anglophone and Francophone identities involvement was a major plus for West African countries. As a result of economic growth, we are able to produce and exploit more products such as rubber in Côte d'Ivoire and Liberia, gold produced in Burkina Faso, Ghana, Mali, uranium produced in Niger, iron produced in Mauritania. Developing industries also started to arise. To balance this, West Africans have shown great improvement over the past 8 years. In fact, Côte d'Ivoire has enjoyed a vibrant, robust, and stable growth since 2012. Secondly, in the financial sector, retailing, manufacturing, MFCG, real estate sector, agriculture, resources such as metal, oils, and gas, the already stated sectors in the workplace opportunity in West African countries have proven to be the most booming businesses and craving more employment. The unemployment rate is in Africa is now become moderate. It is no more catastrophic than elsewhere in the world. The official unemployment rate, calculated by the ILO method, is very low in West Africa. For example, in Benin, the unemployment rate was only 1.7% in 2017. In reference to this, poverty in many countries such as Ghana was 24.2%. Côte d'Ivoire fell sharply to 46.3% in 2013, and in 2015, it was 29.8%. Some may say that language and currency is the barrier that stops West African countries. That is not the case. Currently speaking, in 2021, we have money converters, language interpreters. This cannot be a reason for West Africans to not unite. The real problem lies in African mentality. It starts from our 31 leaders that were there May 24, 1963 with Kwame Nkrumah in Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, when he said, I quote, "We must unite or perish." They sadly disagreed due to greed and need for power. And now we are here debating whether Anglophone and Francophone identities impede our peace. We cannot talk about Anglophone and Francophone impeding peace and stability within West African countries when we can call out our African leaders or ineffective African leaders. Let us define corruption. Corruption is an antisocial attitude, avoiding improper privileges, contrary to the legal moral norms. Corruption in Nigeria, for instance, was estimated to have lost $400 billion after independence. Now, from this information, can we justify that Francophone and Anglophone countries are the issue? No, we cannot. Lastly, let's talk about peace and conflict. Conflicts, let's define conflicts. Conflicts are derivables from possession of and pursuit of divergent ideas, goals, claims, interests, and aspiration by people in their relations. Conflict occurs between individuals within the states, civil war. Furthermore, this thesis appraises the problems of conflict management and resolution in West African subregions, with a view to making recommendations. Hence, conflict comes from West Africans themselves, but not Anglophone and Francophone identities. Surely, by trying to install peace, they brought language differences. But this doesn't make the Anglophone and Francophone identities the problem. For instance, in 1967 and 1970, conflict between Liberian and Sierra Leonean wars created conflict because of natural resources and oils. To conclude, as I have said, this obstruction of peace and stability comes from our West Africans, not Anglo and Francophone identities. Thank you.
Firstly, much was claimed by my dear opponents, but not much was valid. It was said that we could use translators to solve the miscommunications between the Anglophones and the Francophones, but we all know, firstly, human translators, being as human as you and I, can make mistakes and result in miscommunication, which subsequently produces conflict. Machine translators, also being made by humans, translate languages word for word. And we know that the differences between two languages go far beyond the word for word basis. So we cannot use translators to fix miscommunication. As for money converters to help the whole West Africa have one currency, money converters cannot convert conflict into peace. Furthermore, though corruption may be a big problem that we have in West Africa, corruption is not the only thing that makes conflict. And though corruption may be a big problem, the fact that it's a big problem doesn't make the smaller problems any less of problems. The language division causes way too much separations in West Africa. Because we cannot communicate with each other and deal with each other's corruption and actually solve it, how are we supposed to blame this on corruption? We can't even communicate to solve this corruption. The base of the problem is at the language differences. We cannot communicate to solve each other's problems or help each other out to grow and cooperate and have stability and non-conflict. Furthermore, the notion was about whether the Francophone and Anglophone division is impeding sub-regional cooperation, not whether the fact that Côte d'Ivoire speaks good French gives them nice rubber. No, that was not the point. What we are talking about here is whether the fact that we speak different languages is stopping us from achieving cooperation and peace. The fact that Nigeria speaks English and that their economy rose by what, 2% does not promote peace. That's not what we're talking about here. Furthermore, economic growth cannot also grow our peace. It's true that economic growth is a good thing, and we are striving for economic growth. That is not a bad thing, not at all. That's not what I'm saying. But what I want you, my co-debaters, and my opponents to understand is that economic growth, no matter how much money we get, it cannot buy us peace. We have to be able to communicate like civil human beings if we want to achieve peace. But how are we supposed to communicate if we don't speak the same language? To conclude, the main issue here is the fact that we cannot communicate to solve each other's problems and to achieve sub-regional cooperation and peace. Thank you.
Stay with me as I make clear what the other team spent an entire 8 minutes trying to hide. Yes, it is true that there is an inherent division between Anglophones and Francophones in the West African sub-region. However, this is because of our colonial past. From worldstatesman.org, we know that British West Africa as a colonial entity constituted during two periods. First from October 1821 until 1850, and again from 1866 until 1888. Nigeria gained independence in 1960, Sierra Leone in 1961, Gambia in 1965, and Ghana in 1957. According to History.com, Liberia had since been independent in 1847 from the American Colonization Society, the first of all African nations. French West Africa, or Afrique Occidentale Française, as a federation of French countries in West Africa, existed during this time. It existed from 1895 until 1958, when Guinea voted out and declared independence. The rest of the Francophone West African countries gained independence in 1960. Before this, we were all one region. We were all united, and we can still see this through our cultural similarities and our similar heritage. We even have similar language dialects when you look at Ghana, Ivory Coast, and other West African countries, regardless of the Anglophone and Francophone identities. We are now 17 independent countries, and we will be able to make unions. We will be able to work together when we follow our leaders and when we all work together. This has nothing to do with Anglophone and Francophone national identities. We do have the ECOWAS, as the principal speaker of the opponents mentioned, but who cares about further divisions between Francophones and Anglophones? Do these impede our peace, our prosperity, our economic stability? No, they do not. Now that the Anglophones have the West African Monetary Zone and the Francophones have the West African Economic and Monetary Union, we will be able to make further reparations and work together better in a more organized manner under the ECOWAS. For example, we already have visa-free movement within the ECOWAS sub-region implemented under the 1979 Protocol of Free Movement. When I cross the border from Ivory Coast to go to Ghana, I feel at home. These countries are so similar. Why would we let Francophone and Anglophone national identities make us seem different? We cannot do that. Translators do work. Everybody on this stage right now is bilingual. We all speak French and English to a T. You cannot say that machines have problems, human beings can make mistakes. That's not going to cause miscommunication to the point where we would have conflict. It's some little mistakes here and there. We cannot use that to say that Francophone and Anglophone national identities impede our peace, prosperity, or effective cooperation. Corruption is big. Nobody has said that language barriers are not a problem. Nobody has said that there are other problems that are insignificant. We are simply pointing out that there are other factors that impede our peace, effective cooperation, and that we cannot just blame language barriers. Economic stability is just as important as peace and prosperity. Thank you.
I'm Grace Beji, and I stand for the motion. To begin with, my teammates and I would like to clarify the confusion the opponent raised. To further the point my co-debater raised regarding the ECHO, let's note that the ECHO was first brought up on May 28, 1975 as a currency which would be used by all Africans. But how come we have not seen or heard any signs of the ECHO since then? Well, probably because it is systematically impossible for the whole West African community to use a single currency if we are still divided into Francophone and Anglophone identities, which impede our peace. Secondly, some key factors to ensure the strength of a country includes cultural identities, money currencies, and languages. Now, let's take a look at the strongest and richest countries in the world. Majority of them share the same cultures, even though they're still diverse. They share the same money currencies and languages. And most importantly, there is nothing like Francophone and Anglophone identities, which is why these countries are at the top. But let's take a look at West Africa, which has a huge potential. My opponent might classify this point as invalid because there is no comparison between West Africa, which is an African region, and some other countries. But the truth is that this fact stated even applies on the smaller scale. Let's take a look at Cameroon, which is a country made of 80% of Francophone and 20% of Anglophone. Cameroon has a GDP made of 80% Francophone and 20% Anglophone. Cameroon has a GDP growth rate of 0.7% and gross natural income of 98.68 billion PPP dollars, which could be considered as low compared to Ivory Coast, which almost has the same population as Cameroon and a GDP growth rate of 1.8 and also 1.8%. And also, this fact could be linked to the prosperous aspect of the motion. Cameroon also experienced Anglophone crisis in 2016, where over 3,000 people have been unjustly killed. Now, this question goes to the opponent and to the audience. Do you believe innocent mothers, fathers, and children deserve to be killed and tortured in such a way? Think about it. Do you also think if there was nothing like Anglophone and Francophone identities in Cameroon, innocent people will be killed this way? Once more time, think about it. Now, let's take a look at everything Cameroon, which is in Central Africa, suffered. Just imagine what would happen to the whole of West Africa if we don't disregard Francophone and Anglophone identities. It will not surprise me if the opponent came up with diversity as a valid reason for division. But let's not forget that West Africa has an immense amount of cultures and traditions which are here to embrace our differences, which is a much more better way of expressing our diversities, rather than Anglophone and Francophone identities, which divide us further and changes West Africa from a melting pot of distinct cultures into blocks that are constantly disagreeing. African mentality is indeed the only valid point mentioned by the opponent. It is true that one of the main reasons why Africa is not united is due to a poor mentality and government. But the least we could do to make a step closer to peace would be to disregard Francophone and Anglophone identities. How could we deal with such a dominant issue, which is cooperation, if we're unable to agree on our identities? The West African community must be able to fry smaller fishes before trying to figure out how to fry the bigger ones. Regarding prosperity, based on the fact that differences in our national identities impedes our peace, West Africa can be fully prosperous if there is no peace in the West African region. The opponent mentioned a translator as an alternative method of communication if Africa unites. Facts have proven that a message is most likely to be given effectively when it is done directly without any intermediates. It is time. Let's be technical. West Africa, why should West Africa waste its time and resources on translators when our region have issues like ethno-national conflict, drug trafficking, maritime piracy, and extremism to deal with? The opponent made mention of job opportunity increasing due to Anglophone and Francophone identities. While my teammate believed the opponent failed to understand the motion. What needs to be done here is explain whether yes or no the fact that West Africans are divided into Francophone and Anglophone identities impedes the peaceful stability of West Africa, not state the advantages of Francophone and Anglophone identities. Therefore, my teammates and the audience would like some clarification from the opponent. To conclude, so dear administrators, audience, and parents, do you think the argument presented to you by the opposing team is a concrete one? Do you think that the ignorance of language barrier is a minor factor contributing to the lack of cooperation and stability and peace in the entirety of West Africa? With these food thoughts, I leave you. Thank you.
Dear headmistress, moderator, parents, and fellow debaters, it is my honor and privilege to disabuse your minds from the assaults hurled at you all in the name of arguments from the others. The motion highlights how Francophone and Anglophone identities impede effective cooperation towards peace and prosperity. Let's focus on prosperity for a second. It was mentioned by the others that translators tend to be inaccurate and therefore are not a plausible resolution to language barrier issues. Well, let me remind you or inform you that these people are certified and qualified to express the sense of words in another language. Their qualities include having linguistic expertise and being attentive to details. Let me repeat that for you. Attentive to details. That's just to name a few. This clearly means that accuracy is an attribute they possess. Moreover, translation is a profession, meaning it creates job opportunities, meaning unemployment rates is likely to fall, which contributes to economic growth, which is prosperous, isn't it? The others also spoke about how a change in African mentality is not a major issue impeding peace and prosperity. Well, it's because of this intoxicating mentality. It is because of this intoxicating mentality that one could have the audacity to perceive that Francophone and Anglophone identities are divisions and weaknesses instead of strengths. For this exact matter, not only our West African sub-region leaders should change their mentalities, as my teammates said, but also us individually. Let us not forget that there has been significant regional growth, as my teammate stated, and numerous opportunities created because of our Francophone and Anglophone strengths. Just as Kwame Nkrumah said, it is clear that we must find an African solution to our problems and that this can only be found in African unity. Divided, we are weak. United, Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in the world. And I would also like to add this, that we cannot erase history. Of course, I totally agree with that, especially the tragedies in Cameroon. But what we can do is rewrite our future. Thank you very much.
Dear parents and guardians, we hope you have enjoyed our debate. As mentioned in the beginning, you're the judges for this debate. You've heard both sides of the argument. Please send your vote by sending for or against through Zoom message now. Thank you for giving us your attention.